Now in this video, I want to turn to the depreciation, as this is a number that will require a little bit more work and a little bit more discussion. Remember that depreciation is your way of recognizing the cost of an investment over time. In a sense, in this case, we spend $200,000, as you see in your assumptions sheet. We spend $200,000 to build out an individual store, but we don't use that store in just 1 year. That store is used over several years. And so depreciation is what allows us to recognize that the cost of that store should be spread out, and that will matter for the amount of taxes that you pay at the end of the year. Now, in order to determine depreciation, though, we need to first determine how much is the total amount of property, plant, and equipment that our company has. Below the income statement in your spreadsheet, you have a set of auxiliary calculations, and the first one of those is your capital expenditures calculation. I want to go through how one would obtain the gross amount of property, plant, and equipment, then how accumulated depreciation changes over time, and then how we obtain the net amount of property, plant, and equipment. So the case tells us that the gross amount of property, plant, and equipment at the end of 2018 is $4 million. Where does that $4 million come from? Well, the $4 million is the total amount of stores that I have at the end of the year times the amount that it cost me to build out those stores. And of course, here implicitly, there's this assumption that it has always cost us $200,000 to build out stores, and that is what is reflected in this gross amount. Remember to fix those $200,000 because that is not going to change over the next 6 years that we're projecting out. So this is $4 million. Let's be clear about what that number says. That number is the value at which I am registering in my books the value that I've paid to get to those 20 total stores. Let's think about how this changes over time. This number is going to grow as I add stores. Let's look at 2019. In 2019, the amount of property, plant, and equipment that I have is $5 million. Those $5 million are the 25 stores that I have in 2019 times the amount that it cost me to build them out. That amount keeps growing all the way to 2023, where I'll have gross property, plant, and equipment of $8 million. And now you might ask, wait, but over time, those stores are being used. They're probably going to be worth less, at least from an accounting perspective, where I'm thinking about building up fixed assets and then depreciation slowly making those assets be worth less and less over time. And you would be exactly right. That is going to be reflected up here in my income statement. Remember that we have that depreciation number. I will violate my rule only once in terms of writing down the amount of depreciation because I don't have enough information to know how much property, plant, and equipment I had last year. So let me just put in $400,000. But let me go to 2019 and ask, so how much is the depreciation that I have in that year? So how much am I recognizing as a cost related to the capital expenditures that I've made in the past? Well, if I go to assumptions, you will see that the depreciation is 10% of the existing property, plant, and equipment. That rate never changes, so I will fix that number again. So what does this mean of existing property, plant, and equipment? Well, if you go down to my property, plant, and equipment calculation, in 2019, when I started, I had $4 million of gross property, plant, and equipment. That is the amount that I will depreciate over the coming year. So in 2019, my depreciation is again $400,000. Now you might ask, wait, but you have $5 million at the end of 2019 in terms of property, plant, and equipment. That is correct. But some of that, and in fact 1 million of that, is because of 5 new stores that I am building during that year. And the assumption that I'm using is that those are not operating. If they are not operating, I am not going to depreciate them. I will assume they are ready right at the end of 2019. And so they will start to be depreciated during the year of 2020. So the depreciation in 2019 only refers to the number of stores that I had last year. And that is what I did in this pro forma up here, where I said it is 10%, that's assumptions B9, of the amount of property, plant, and equipment that I had last year. I'm going to do this every year starting in 2019. And so you see that depreciation is growing as the total number of stores in each year is also growing. Now, what is happening to the accumulated depreciation and then the net value of property, plant, and equipment in the company? Now, the accumulated depreciation, we have no way of knowing from just this Excel spreadsheet how much we had accumulated in the past. But the case tells us that we had accumulated $800,000 of depreciation by the end of 2018. So how much would we have in 2019? Well, we would have whatever amount we had last year, because now we're accumulating over time. I had whatever I had last year, plus the depreciation that I produced this year. So it is whatever I had last year plus the amount that I produced this year. So given that depreciation this year is $400,000, and I start out the year with $800,000, now I've accumulated a total of $1.2 million. This is now going to be the same formula going on and on and on. And so, for example, in 2023, depreciation is $800,000. And that is given by what I had last year, which is $3 million, plus that $800,000, means that I've accumulated a total of $3.8 million. That is going to result in the net amount of property, plant, and equipment that the balance sheet of this company would reflect. The net amount is the gross property, plant, and equipment minus the amount that I've accumulated in depreciation. That is going to be true every year. And so, as you see, I have a net amount of property, plant, and equipment of $4.2 million. If we were to continue doing this, we would depreciate our stores. In fact, given the 10% depreciation rate, we would depreciate them for 10 years until their net value on the balance sheet would be zero. When that happens, we stop depreciating an asset. And so at some point, for each individual store, we would have to stop depreciating them because they have no accounting value left.